I was 16 the day my sister threw my entire comic book collection in the trash. I remember the exact moment because it was the first time I felt that strange, hollow ache in my chest, like I was too stunned to be angry, like something important had just been ripped away and nobody around me even noticed. My name's Tyler, and I'm 21 now, but that moment? That was the spark. The beginning of everything. I didn't scream. I didn't fight. I just stood there, blinking, as my younger sister, Leah, laughed like she'd done me a favor. Let me back up for a second. Our family wasn't dysfunctional, not on the surface. My mom, Judith, worked part-time at the public library and ran the house with that tired, soft-spoken voice that made everything sound like a suggestion. My dad was long gone. He left when I was 9, and if I'm being honest, I don't really remember much about him except that he used to whistle in the car, and he always let me sit in the front seat, even when Mom said I was too young. After he left, it was just us three, Mom, Leah, and me. And somehow, over the years, that dynamic shifted into something lopsided. Unspoken. Unequal. Leah's 2 years younger than me. She's the kind of girl who knows how to twist a situation in her favor with just the right combination of wide-eyed innocence and passive-aggressive jabs. Growing up, she wasn't outright cruel, just casually thoughtless in the way some kids are when they've been taught that the world orbits around them. She broke my Lego Death Star when she was 10 and blamed the dog. She borrowed my Game Boy in 7th grade and sold it to a kid at school for $20 because she didn't think I played it anymore. Every time, Mom would excuse it. She didn't mean to. She's still learning. Don't make a big deal out of it, Tyler. So I learned not to. I kept to myself. I got good at disappearing into my room, into my hobbies. And most of all, I got good at collecting. Comics became my obsession around age 13. After I found a battered copy of Amazing Spider-Man number 361 at a yard sale for $3. It was beat to hell, but I remember holding it like it was some kind of holy text. From then on, I was hooked. I researched online. I learned how to grade conditions. I joined forums. Traded. Bought. Sold. I even started slipping some money into a small savings account to make bigger purchases. And eventually, with help from a part-time job shelving books at the same library Mom worked at, I built a modest but valuable collection. Not huge, but curated. Thoughtful. Personal. I didn't keep the good ones in my room. By the time I turned 17, I'd saved up enough to rent a safe deposit box at the bank a few blocks away. It cost me $35 a year, and Mom teased me about it at first. "You really think someone's going to break in and steal your Batman comics?" she joked. I just shrugged. Better safe than sorry. What I didn't say was that I'd started to notice things going missing around the house. Little things. A rare Funko Pop I'd kept boxed. A signed Deadpool poster from the con I went to in 10th grade. Nothing major, nothing I could prove, but enough to feel that itch of suspicion. That brings us back to the day it happened. I'd just gotten home from school, stomach growling, backpack heavy with finals review packets. The second I stepped inside, I knew something was off. The house smelled like citrus cleaner, Leah's version of "I did something I shouldn't have." And sure enough, when I walked past the living room, I saw it. My long comic box, the white archival one I kept under my bed, dumped in the corner next to a torn trash bag. Empty. At first, I thought maybe Mom had moved them. Maybe they'd been chewed by mice or damaged somehow, and she'd set them aside. I knelt, checking the box, my heart rate kicking up. "Gone. Leah?" I called out, voice wavering. She popped her head around the hallway, ponytail bouncing, and smirked. "Oh, yeah, that junk. I threw it out." I stared at her. "You what?" She rolled her eyes, like I was the one being unreasonable. "I thought it was trash. I didn't know you still cared about those. You never even read them." "They were bagged and boarded," I said slowly. "Labeled. In a box under my bed." She shrugged. "Well, maybe don't keep trash in your room if it's so valuable." Then, the kicker, she actually laughed. "Oops, I thought that was trash." I stood there, frozen. My fingers clenched. My jaw locked. But I didn't yell. I didn't even raise my voice. I just turned and walked down the hall to my room. The smell of cleaning fluid followed me like a ghost. I sat on my bed for a long time. I didn't cry. I was too old for that. But I did feel this weird kind of grief, like something had died. Not just the comics, but the years I'd spent building something I cared about. The hours researching, trading, saving. It was all gone, tossed in the bin like leftover pizza crusts. That night, at dinner, I brought it up. Calmly, quietly. "Mom," I said, pushing peas around my plate. Leah threw out my comic books. She didn't even look up from her pasta. I heard. She said it was an accident. She said she thought it was trash. Mom sighed. "Well, maybe next time you should keep things you care about somewhere safer." "I did," I said. "They were in a sealed box, under my bed. Bagged. Labeled. Some of those were signed, Mom." Leah cut in, chewing loudly. "You're being so dramatic." I looked at Mom. "Are you going to do anything?" She gave me that soft, exasperated smile I'd come to hate. "Tyler." She didn't know any better. And that was it. Conversation over. Just like that. I was expected to forgive, to move on, to understand. And maybe, if this were just one isolated event, I could have. But it wasn't. It was just the latest in a long line of moments where Leah was never held accountable, where I was told to be the bigger person, where everything I valued was treated like some silly boyish hobby that didn't matter in the grand scheme of things. But here's the thing. I'm not a kid anymore. And they had no idea what else I'd been keeping in that safe deposit box. So that night, while everyone else slept, I took a walk. I stepped out into the cool night air, hoodie zipped up, keys in my pocket. I walked to the bank, 24-hour lobby glowing under flickering fluorescent lights, an unlocked box 178. Inside were more than just comics. There were savings bonds, a few gold coins from Grandpa's estate, a folder of signed original sketches I'd traded for over the years, and, most importantly, a sealed envelope. It had Mom's signature on it. She didn't know I had it. She didn't even remember giving it to me. But I remembered. I remembered exactly what she said when she handed me that envelope 3 years ago. "This is for emergencies. For your future. Don't tell Leah. I'm still setting up her account." That envelope contained something she'd forgotten all about. Her co-signature on a college fund account. And by morning, that account would have a new beneficiary. Me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Because the real revenge, the one I've been quietly setting up ever since that night, that's still coming. And it's going to be good. The morning after Leah trashed my comic books, I didn't say a word at breakfast. I sipped my orange juice, scraped my spoon against a bowl of soggy cereal, and listened to the sound of Leah humming while she scrolled through her phone. Mom was making her usual Monday to-do list on a sticky note, her pen tapping against the table between tasks like return library books and buy more almond milk. They were both acting like nothing happened, like the last 5 years of my life hadn't just been dumped into a trash bin and rolled out to the curb. I wanted to scream, to shout, to grab Leah's phone and hurl it through the window, just to make her feel what it was like to lose something without warning. But I didn't, because by then, I had already learned that rage only gave them something to point to. "Why are you so angry, Tyler? Don't take everything so seriously. You need to be more forgiving." So instead, I smiled. I let Leah believe she won. But something shifted in me that day. And slowly, over the next few weeks, the cracks in our family dynamic that I'd always pretended weren't there started to gape open into something deeper. Something darker. The favoritism became more obvious once I started looking for it. Like how Mom would let Leah drive her car whenever she asked, despite the fact that Leah had already backed it into a mailbox once. Meanwhile, I still had to take the bus to class or beg for rides to work. Or how Leah got a brand new iPhone for her birthday while I was still using a hand-me-down that barely held a charge. When I asked Mom about it, she just said she needs it for school, like I wasn't also a full-time student pulling a 3.8 GPA while holding down a part-time job. But the real kicker? The one that finally made me realize how far this had gone. That happened on the night of Leah's graduation party. It was supposed to be a small get-together in the backyard. A barbecue, some balloons, a Costco sheet cake. I wasn't even planning on staying long. But when I walked out back and saw the setup, my jaw almost hit the ground. There was a DJ, a rented dance floor, fairy lights strung across the patio, a custom photo booth with a giant glittery sign that read Leah's Big Day, tables covered in catered food, dozens of guests, half of whom I didn't even recognize. And smack in the center of it all was Leah, wearing a designer dress that probably cost more than my entire tuition bill, posing for photos like she was the guest of honor at her own wedding. I stood there for a moment, trying to process. This wasn't a graduation party. This was a coronation. "Tyler." Mom waved me over, looking flushed and proud. "Isn't it beautiful? Your sister worked so hard. She deserves to celebrate." "Yeah," I said flatly. "Must have cost a lot." "Oh, don't worry about that. she said, brushing it off like the price tag didn't matter. This is a once-in-a-lifetime moment. I looked around at the party. The speakers, the decorations, the rented tent. And then I remembered my graduation party, 2 years ago. A store-bought cake, a pizza, a stack of paper plates, and a single card signed, Love, Mom, and Leah. I left after 10 minutes, and nobody even noticed. So yeah, standing there in the middle of Leah's luxury backyard bash, something broke inside me. But the worst part hadn't even happened yet. That came an hour later, when Leah opened her gifts in front of everyone. There were the usual cards full of cash, a few thoughtful gifts from friends, a ridiculously expensive makeup kit from Aunt Maggie. Then Mom handed her a sleek blue envelope. "This one's special," she said, beaming. "It's from me." Leah tore it open and gasped. "Is this?" Mom nodded, eyes shining. "It's your college fund. Full ride. Just like we promised." The crowd clapped. Someone shouted, "Go Leah," and Leah squealed, hugging Mom. I stood there frozen, everything else fading into white noise. Her college fund. Her college fund. The same one Mom had said she was still setting up when she handed me that envelope years ago. The same one that, until that moment, I had assumed didn't exist yet, or had been delayed, or something. But it existed, fully funded, ready to go, just not for me. After the party, I confronted her. "Mom," I said, my voice low, trying to stay calm. "You told me you were still setting up Leah's account when you gave me that envelope." She blinked at me like she'd forgotten we'd even had that conversation. I was. Things just moved faster with hers. "What happened to mine?" She sighed. "Tyler, you didn't need one. You got that scholarship, remember? And you're working. I figured you were handling it." "That scholarship only covers half," I said. "And I've been dipping into my savings every semester just to keep up." "You knew that." "You're doing great," she said gently. "You're independent. Leah, she's different. She needs more support." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "So because I work hard, I get less help?" Mom didn't answer. She just gave me that pitying look, like I was the problem for even asking. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake thinking about every small thing I'd overlooked. Every time Leah broke something of mine and got away with it. Every time Mom told me to be the bigger person. Every moment I convinced myself it was just in my head. It wasn't. And the moment that truly pushed me over the edge came the next day. I got home from work late. I was exhausted. I walked in the door and saw Leah sitting on the couch, flipping through a binder. My binder. The one I kept in my room, tucked between textbooks, filled with sketches, notes, signed prints, stuff I hadn't put in the safe deposit box because it was too bulky. "What are you doing?" I asked, heart racing. She didn't even flinch. "Oh, I needed a folder for my internship stuff. Yours was just lying around." I rushed over and grabbed it out of her hands. "This isn't a folder, Leah. It's my portfolio." She raised an eyebrow. "Relax. I didn't mess it up." I opened it. Pages bent. Smudges on the corners. One of the signed sketches half-folded. I couldn't breathe. "You had no right." "Oh my God, calm down," she snapped. "It's not like it's worth anything." And that's when something inside me snapped. I didn't yell. I didn't slam the binder shut or storm off. I just looked at her. For a long, long time. And then I said, very quietly, "You're going to regret that." She rolled her eyes. "Whatever." But she didn't know. She didn't know about the envelope in my desk drawer. She didn't know I still had access to the college fund account. She didn't know what I'd already started planning. Because while they were busy celebrating Leah's big day, I had been doing some digging. And what I found, let's just say Mom should have read the fine print before handing over control. The account had a clause that allowed the beneficiary to be changed, with both parties' signatures. And guess whose signature I already had, from 3 years ago? Yeah, the best part? They still had no idea. Not when I copied the forms. Not when I walked into the bank. Not when I made the switch. But what I did next, that's when everything truly unraveled. And it all started with a letter, which they'd be opening in about 24 hours. The envelope arrived on a Wednesday. I had sent it through certified mail with delivery confirmation, addressed to Judith and Leah Brooks, in neat block letters, no return address. I imagined the moment they opened it, probably over breakfast, maybe while Leah scrolled on her phone and Mom jotted down her library hours. I imagined the confusion, the double takes, the disbelief as their eyes scanned the paperwork and realized what I'd done. And then, the silence. The first 24 hours were dead quiet. No texts. No calls. Not even a passive-aggressive group chat message. It was the quiet before a hurricane, and I could feel it gathering in the distance. When it finally hit, it wasn't what I expected. It came from my mom's number, mid-afternoon, while I was shelving books at the library. "Mom, we need to talk. Now." I read it twice, thumb hovering over the screen. I could have ignored it. Could have made her wait like I'd been made to wait. Ignored like I'd been ignored. But I'm not wired that way. So I went outside, stood in the cold by the dumpsters, and called her. She picked up immediately. "Tyler," she said, tight and clipped. "What did you do?" I said nothing for a moment, letting the silence stretch. "Don't play games," she snapped. "We got the letter." "I didn't do anything illegal," I said calmly. "You gave me that signed document years ago. You just forgot. That was for you, not for her," she hissed. "You weren't supposed to use it like this." "Right," I said, "because I was never supposed to need it. Remember? I was doing fine. I was independent. I was supposed to just handle everything on my own." There was a long pause on the other end. I could hear Leah shouting something in the background. "I can't believe you do this to your sister," Mom said finally, her voice suddenly brittle. "This is her future." "No," I said, my voice steady. "It was mine. You just gave it away." I hung up, and for a moment, I felt powerful. I felt seen. But that feeling didn't last. What I hadn't counted on was how far they'd go to punish me. It started small. Mom stopped talking to me unless it was strictly necessary. Leah unfollowed me on everything and made a dramatic Instagram post about betrayal from those closest to you. I rolled my eyes and ignored it. Then things got worse. Mom told me I couldn't keep staying at the house rent-free if I was going to undermine the family. She framed it like a lesson in responsibility, but I knew it was punishment. Leah got to live there without paying a dime, but I suddenly owed $500 a month for utilities and space. When I pointed out the hypocrisy, Mom just said, "She's about to start college, Tyler. She needs stability. You're a grown man." I packed my things that weekend. I moved into a tiny studio near campus. Barely 300 square feet, paper-thin walls, kitchen sink next to the shower. It smelled like dust and loneliness. My savings took a hit. My meals turned into ramen and peanut butter sandwiches. I dropped one of my classes to make room for more hours at work. There were nights I'd come home so exhausted I'd sit on the edge of the bed and just stare at the wall. No music, no TV, just the hum of the fridge and the ache of being unwanted. That was rock bottom. And weirdly, it was also where things started to change. Because when you've got nothing left to prove to anyone, you stop wasting time trying to be understood. You start doing things for you. I doubled down at work, took on extra shifts, said yes to every task, every weird book request, every, "Can you help set up for the author talk?" I became dependable, fast, resourceful. My boss noticed. She recommended me for a statewide youth literacy grant program that offered stipends and networking opportunities for future librarians and educators. I applied on a whim. I got in. Suddenly, I was meeting people, professionals, authors, indie comic writers. I talked about my portfolio, about storytelling, about the role of comics in education and childhood development. I showed my sketches, the ones Leah had nearly ruined. And to my surprise, people didn't laugh. They asked for more. One local comic store invited me to do a small panel on indie comics for young readers. Another offered to sell prints of my original work. I opened a small Etsy shop, uploaded digital commissions. Nothing fancy, just a side hustle. But it was mine. The money started trickling in. Not a fortune, but enough. Enough to keep the lights on. Enough to order groceries without calculating every can of beans. Enough to feel like I had a foothold again. And then came the email. A friend of a friend I'd met at the grant program forwarded me a notice. An indie comic anthology was accepting submissions for their spring issue. Theme, reinvention. Small circulation, modest pay, but respected. A stepping stone. I stayed up for 3 nights working on it. Drafted, sketched, inked. I poured everything into that story. About a boy who built a suit of armor from scrap metal, not to fight dragons or save princesses, but just to walk through a world that never bothered to protect him. I submitted it and forgot about it. I didn't expect anything. And then, 1 month later, I got the acceptance. I stared at the email so long I forgot to breathe. The story was going to print. They wanted a short author bio, a headshot. They were going to pay me. I called no one. Not Mom. Not Leah. I didn't need their validation anymore. Instead, I called my old art teacher from high school, The one who used to sneak me extra markers and always said, "You've got a story to tell, Tyler. Don't let anyone talk over it." She cried on the phone. The thing is, success doesn't erase pain. It doesn't fill in all the cracks. There were still nights I missed my old room. Still moments I wanted to call home just to hear someone ask how I was doing. But then I'd remember what home had become. A place where I was punished for standing up for myself. A place where silence was safer than truth. I saw them occasionally, from a distance. Leah posted photos of her college grind life, lattes and lecture halls, curated playlists, and aesthetic dorm shots. But I knew things weren't going as planned. The bank wouldn't reverse the beneficiary change. Legally, they couldn't. And while Leah still had her partial scholarship, it didn't cover her out-of-state tuition. Mom must have scrambled to find alternate funding, but the party budget had probably eaten into their reserves. Credit cards, loans. I saw the cracks forming in her posts, passive-aggressive captions about people who sabotage you and family who only care about themselves. I didn't respond. Why would I? I wasn't part of that story anymore. But one night, something unexpected happened. I was leaving work late, closing the library, when I saw her. Leah, sitting on the curb outside, arms wrapped around her knees, hoodie pulled up to hide her face. My stomach turned. I almost kept walking, but something in me paused. "Leah?" She looked up. Her eyes were red. Mascara smeared. She scoffed. "Wow, you look normal." I blinked. "Thanks." She wiped her nose. I didn't know where else to go. I didn't say anything. "I didn't mean for everything to fall apart," she mumbled. "I didn't think you'd actually go through with it." I crossed my arms. "You didn't think I'd stand up for myself." She didn't deny it. For a long time, we just sat there. No shouting. No sarcasm. Just quiet. She finally spoke. "Mom's been a wreck. She's blaming the bank, the school, everything but herself." I sighed. Typical. Leah looked at me, really looked at me, like she hadn't seen me in years. "You changed." I shrugged. "I had to." She fiddled with her sleeve. "Are you happy?" I thought about my apartment. The published story. The small prints hanging above my desk. The emails from customers. The quiet, steady heartbeat of a life I'd built myself. "I'm getting there." Leah didn't respond. Eventually, I stood. "You should head home. It's late." She didn't argue, just nodded. As I turned to leave, she called after me. "Tyler." "Yeah." I was wrong. For a moment, I wanted to believe that was the start of something. A truce. A slow path toward healing. But then she added, "But you didn't have to go nuclear." And just like that, I realized she still didn't get it. I smiled, small, tired. "Yeah, I did." And I walked away. What came next wasn't easy. There were more late nights, more bills, more pressure. But there was also peace. Control. The knowledge that everything I had, I'd earned. The college fund helped, sure, but I still had to fight for every inch of ground I gained. And as I stood in that tiny studio apartment, sketchpad in one hand and an acceptance email in the other, I realized something I'd never felt before. I wasn't surviving anymore. I was becoming. But I wasn't finished. Not yet. Because there was still one more move left to make. One more moment of truth. And this time, it wasn't going to come in the form of a letter. It was going to be public. Revenge doesn't always come with a bang. Sometimes it's quiet, surgical, cold and precise, like the twist of a key in a lock or the soft click of a door closing behind you forever. I didn't want vengeance for the sake of pain anymore. Not after everything I'd built. But I did want the truth to come out. Not whispered behind closed doors or shrugged off like a joke, but said aloud, undeniable, in front of the very people who had treated me like I was always one step below worthy. I didn't want to destroy my mother or my sister. I wanted them to see me, and to finally understand what they'd lost. The opportunity came 2 months later, wrapped in a perfectly innocent email. Subject: Library Annual Donor Banquet. RSVP now. I almost deleted it on reflex. Just another boring event hosted by the library board for rich old patrons who liked sipping white wine while bragging about their grandkids' GPAs. But I skimmed it anyway, mostly out of habit. My finger froze halfway down the message. This year, we're proud to showcase local rising creatives and community success stories, highlighting the talents of those who've blossomed within our very own programs. Attached beneath the sentence were 3 photos. The third one was me. It was from the Youth Literacy Program's Spring Showcase, me standing behind a table of my comic prints, grinning like I had no idea I was about to be put on blast for the entire county. The caption, Tyler Brooks, illustrator, educator, youth grant recipient. My heart stopped, then skipped, then took off like a hummingbird on espresso. It was the kind of twist no writer would dare make up. Too poetic, too perfect. The same library where Mom worked. The same library where I had shelved books for years, quietly blending into the background, smiling through gritted teeth while they threw all their support at my sister. Now I was the story. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen. A plan began to form. Not all at once, but slowly, methodically, like pieces clicking into place. The first step was to confirm whether Mom would even be there. I didn't want to tip my hand too soon. She still worked part-time at the library, but she'd cut back her hours since Leah started college. I shot a quick text to Beth, one of the full-time librarians and my former boss. Me. Hey, just wondering, are library staff attending the banquet this year? Beth, yup. Judith said she's bringing her daughter. Fancy night for the Brooks women, winking face. Of course. I stared at the message, my pulse quickening. Judith and Leah. Matching dresses. Big smiles. Ready to play the part of the selfless single mother and her bright, college-bound daughter. They'd be expecting polite applause. What they wouldn't expect was me. Step 2. I needed to look the part. It wasn't about vanity. It was strategy. Because the last time they saw me, I was living off peanut butter and wearing the same 3 thrift store flannels in rotation. I wanted the first glance to punch them in the gut. I wanted them to feel that hesitation, that moment of, wait, is that him? So I dipped into my growing Etsy funds and bought a navy blue tailored suit. Nothing outrageous. Clean lines. Crisp fit. I even had the tailor add a subtle silver thread down the inside seam of the jacket. Just enough flash to catch the light, not scream for it. I got a haircut, trimmed my beard, bought a new leather messenger bag to replace the duct-taped backpack I used to carry around like a turtle shell. When I looked in the mirror, I saw someone else entirely. Someone they'd never met before. Someone they couldn't ignore. Step 3. Allies. I didn't need an army. Just one person who knew the whole story and wouldn't fold under pressure. So I called Brandon. Brandon was a friend I met through the grant program. An art school grad with a sharp tongue, a sharper memory, and zero tolerance for fake people. He and I had clicked instantly over a shared love of anti-heroes and espresso brewed strong enough to melt steel. I explained the situation in detail. The family history, the betrayal, the banquet. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, there was a long pause. Then he said, "Bro, this is like an indie film waiting to happen." I laughed. "So you in?" "Oh, I'm so in." Brandon agreed to be my +1 and, more importantly, my backup. Not just moral support, but witness. A second pair of eyes. Someone to intercept if things got ugly. Someone who could verify every word if I needed it later. He even offered to bring a camera. Just in case, he said. You know, for posterity. Step 4. The speech. I knew I'd be called up to say a few words. Each of the featured creatives got 3 minutes to talk about their journey, how the library helped, and where they were headed next. Most people used it as an opportunity to thank their mentors or pitch their projects. But I had other plans. Not an attack, not a public tantrum. Something quieter, sharper, something they wouldn't see coming until it was too late. I spent days crafting it, rewriting, rehearsing, stripping it down to its bare bones. Every word had to walk the tightrope, true, but indirect, personal, but universal. I wanted the audience to feel the weight of it, even if they didn't know the specifics. But Mom and Leah? Oh, they'd understand every syllable, and it would eat them alive. The banquet arrived faster than I expected. That night, the city library was transformed. Paperbacks replaced with floral arrangements, circulation desks covered in white linens, and flickering votives. Staff members wore their best formal wear. A jazz trio played softly in the corner. Waiters weaved through the crowd with trays of sparkling cider and tiny hors d'oeuvres that looked like edible origami. Brandon and I entered side by side. He wore a charcoal blazer, black boots, and his signature smirk. I could already feel people glancing our way as we moved through the room. 2 young guys who looked prepared. We weren't 20 steps in when I heard her voice. "Oh my God, is that Tyler?" I turned. There she was, Leah, in a backless burgundy gown with sequins down the side, long hair curled into perfection, one hand clutching a glass of something pink and sugary. She looked like a poster for prom night royalty. And next to her, Mom. A vision of calculated warmth, all pearls and pastel silk. The kind of outfit that screamed, I give to charities and attend PTA meetings. Even if the truth was something much messier. I met Leah's eyes. She blinked. Her expression didn't change, but her hand tightened around the glass. Tyler, Mom said, stepping forward. I didn't realize you were invited. I was featured, I said. Brandon raised a hand in a lazy wave. We're the entertainment. Leah's jaw clenched. You look different. Yeah, I said. Success will do that to you. Brandon coughed into his sleeve to hide a laugh. Mom forced a smile. Well, I'm glad you're doing well. I nodded. Me too. I used that college fund you co-signed. Changed my life. Leah looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. Before either of them could respond, the announcer tapped the mic at the front of the room. Ladies and gentlemen, please find your seats. Tonight's program is about to begin. I turned and walked toward the stage. And behind me, I could feel them watching. The first few speakers were fine. Polished. Predictable. Lots of, I wouldn't be here without the library, and thank you to everyone who believed in me. Then they called my name. I stepped up to the podium, took a breath, and looked out over the room. The crowd was a mix of donors, educators, board members. Faces I barely knew. But my eyes landed on two I knew all too well, seated at a table near the front, directly in my line of sight. Judith. Leah. Frozen. Waiting. I began. When I was younger, I learned two things very early. First, that some people's mistakes are forgiven before they even apologize. And second, that other people are expected to be perfect just to earn a seat at the table. There was a slight shift in the crowd. I smiled. My journey hasn't been easy. I grew up in a home where value wasn't always measured by effort, or by passion, or even by respect, but by convenience. And when I started collecting comics, it wasn't just about the stories. It was about control, about building something nobody could take from me. My voice stayed even, measured. Of course, things were taken. More than once. But that's the thing about loss. It teaches you what's really worth protecting. It teaches you how to build again. I glanced toward them. Leah's face was pale. Mom looked like someone had unplugged her. Brandon was off to the side, nodding slowly, eyes wide with silent applause. I stand here tonight not because someone opened doors for me, I continued, but because I learned how to open them myself. And then, I built my own house. Silence. Then applause. Not thunderous, but real, genuine. I stepped down, and as I walked past their table, I didn't look at them. Because for the first time in my life, I didn't need to. But the real moment of reckoning? It hadn't happened yet. That was still coming. And it would take place exactly 1 week later, when the library posted a video of the banquet speeches to their official website and social media. And people started asking questions. Questions Mom couldn't answer, and Leah couldn't spin, because their lies had finally found daylight. And I was just getting started. The video went live on a Tuesday. The library posted it on their Facebook page with the caption, Inspiring Stories from Our Annual Donor Banquet. These young creators are the future. They time-stamped each speaker in the description. Mine was the third. The thumbnail was me, standing at the podium, hands loosely gripping the sides, wearing that quiet, confident smile I'd practiced in the mirror. I wasn't expecting it to blow up. It wasn't like I went viral or ended up on the front page of Reddit. But local communities are smaller than we think. And tight-knit ones? Even smaller. It started with a few comments under the video. That was the most honest 3 minutes I've ever heard. Who is this Tyler Brooks guy? I need to buy whatever he's selling. This hit home. I grew up in a house just like that. Then someone shared it on the local college's subreddit. Then it got reposted to a regional Facebook group for young creatives and educators. By Friday, it had trickled into Instagram stories, tagged and clipped by kids I didn't even know. And eventually, it found its way to the library's Yelp page, buried in a 5-star review titled, Come for the books, stay for the truth bombs. But the real consequences didn't begin until someone from the library board called a meeting. Not with me. With Mom. See, while I never said her name during my speech, people recognized the dynamics. And some of them already knew who I was. It wasn't hard to connect the dots. The single mom who worked part-time at the library. The brother-sister dynamic. The missing college fund. The quiet one who used to shelve books that no one really paid attention to until now. One of the older volunteers, a sweet woman named Helen who always brought cookies on Fridays, apparently approached Mom the next week and said, "I had no idea your son was that articulate. Why didn't you ever mention him?" According to Beth, my former boss, Mom just blinked. Didn't know what to say. Didn't have anything to say. The fallout wasn't instant. But like any good domino setup, once the first one fell, the rest followed. The library board started reviewing internal hiring and promotion practices. Some of the donors who attended the banquet asked why more attention hadn't been given to all the youth in the programs, not just the ones with louder parents. There was a soft, growing murmur of dissatisfaction among staff who had always suspected favoritism but never had proof. And then, quietly, Mom's hours were cut. Officially, it was due to budget reallocation. Unofficially, Beth told me they were trying to phase out potential liability. Mom didn't tell me, but I heard about it from 3 people within the same day. I wish I could say I felt triumphant. Instead, I just felt done. Leah, on the other hand, didn't go quietly. A week after the video went semi-local viral, she DM'd me on Instagram. It was short. No greeting. "Leah, did you really have to humiliate us?" I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. "Me? You humiliated yourself. I just told the truth." She responded 5 minutes later. "Leah, no. You framed the truth. You made it sound like we ruined your life." "Me? You didn't ruin my life. You just made it harder. And then acted like I should thank you for it." That one hit a nerve. She didn't reply for a full day. When she finally did, it was longer. "Leah, do you think I had it easy? I've always been the one who had to live up to expectations. You got to be the quiet genius. I was just the girl who messed things up. So yeah, maybe I did lash out. But I didn't know how else to get noticed." For a second, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered the binder. The trashed comics. The look on her face when she laughed and said, "Oops, I thought that was trash." So I typed back, "Me, you got noticed. Just not the way you wanted." Then I blocked her. That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. Because a few weeks later, something strange happened. A package arrived at my apartment. No return address. Just my name in messy handwriting. I opened it slowly, expecting something petty or dramatic. Inside was a book. Amazing Spider-Man number 361. Near mint. The same issue I'd found at a yard sale when I was 13. The one that started it all. There was a sticky note on the inside cover. "I found this at a convention. Figured you'd want it. L." I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the comic. I didn't know if it was an apology, a peace offering, a guilt-fueled attempt at closure. But I kept it. I slid it into a plastic sleeve and tucked it into my new long box. Not because I forgave her, but because it reminded me of who I used to be and how far I'd come since then. Life didn't magically become perfect after that. I still had to work. Still had bills. Still had nights where the loneliness crept in like fog and sat on my chest for hours. But I also had freedom. And purpose. My Etsy store gained traction after the banquet video circulated. Orders tripled. I launched a Patreon. I started a newsletter for my followers called The Long Box Letter, where I shared stories, sketches, and behind-the-scenes looks at my process. I even got a message from a local school district asking if I'd be willing to do a workshop for teens about storytelling through comics. I said yes. And when I walked into that classroom a month later, marker in hand, a dozen wide-eyed kids waiting to hear what I had to say, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't doing this because of my family. I was doing it in spite of them. As for Mom, we haven't spoken in 6 months. She tried calling once, left a voicemail, said something about wanting to clear the air and get back to a place of understanding. But I didn't return the call, because the truth is, I finally understood everything. I understood that her love had always been conditional, measured in obedience, in silence, in how well I fit into the role she'd assigned me. And I wasn't playing that part anymore. I sometimes think about the night Leah threw out my comics. That careless smirk, that offhand, "Oops, I thought that was trash." She thought she was tossing paper. She didn't realize she was lighting a match. But here's the thing about fire. It doesn't just burn. It purifies. It clears the ground so something stronger can grow. And me? I didn't just grow. I built something that can't be thrown away. Not again. Not ever. Because some things aren't trash. They're kindling.